Hi, and welcome to today's video. I'm going to show you how I make these cute seashell ceramic paint palettes. They're super fun to make and use, and it's pretty easy too. It's a good beginner project, but it also uses a variety of skills like rolling out a slab, using stamps, and there's also an optional sprig mold section. If you don't know me, my name is Ruth. I'm a ceramic artist, and I love sharing everything that I've learned about ceramics. So yeah, thanks for being here, and let's get into it. I'm going to be using my slab roller to roll out the slabs that we need to start this project. If you don't have a slab roller, I'm also going to show you how to roll out a slab using just a rolling pin and some thickness guides, so feel free to skip ahead to that part. So this is about the thickness that I use with my slab roller. You don't want it to be too thick, and then even thinner if you're just using a rolling pin, and you want it to be narrower too because you don't want the slab to go outside of the width of your rolling pin. So to roll out the slab with the slab roller, we have to first adjust the rollers to make sure the clay can pass through it first, and then start passing the clay between the rollers and just decreasing the height between the rollers each time. And it's really important to rotate and also flip your slab every couple of passes so the clay doesn't get stressed all in one direction, because that can cause cracking or warping in your slab. I think this is looking pretty good. So this is the slab that I am going to start with. It's about a fingernail width thick, but you could actually go a little bit thicker if you wanted to. So these are the tools that we're working with: a rolling pin, a wire cutting tool, a smoothing rib, and sponges. And here are our thickness guides. I'm actually going to be using the 10mm ones. A fettling knife or a pottery knife, a trimming tool, a needle tool, and a wire brush scoring tool, some seashells, and access to a kiln. I use my little Paragon Caldera kiln. And I'm working on this masonite board. Another option would be a wedging board or like a canvas surface. So I like to start out by rolling out the slab without the guides first, and then adding the guides once it's a little bit thinner, just because it's easier that way. And make sure to flip and rotate your slab every once in a while, one, so it doesn't get stuck to your surface, but it also helps to just roll out your slab more evenly, and so it doesn't stress the clay just in one direction. So once your clay has been rolled out to an even thickness, just pick it up one more time to make sure it doesn't stick to your surface. And a quick tip about lifting up your slab: whenever you lift it up, try to bend it as little as possible so it lays flat when it dries. And you can smooth it out using that plastic rib tool. And I like to trace my shape lightly on the clay before I cut into it. So now we're going to use our knife to cut out our shape for the palette and then remove the excess. And it's really important to smooth the edges of the shape because you don't want any sharp bits after it's fired. So here's my assortment of seashells. So we're going to press down evenly and firmly to make the paint wells, but you don't want to press too hard because you don't want to go through the clay. So yeah, you're essentially just using these as stamps into the clay, and that is where your paint's gonna go. And you can pretty much make the palette be any shape that you want. So I did this round one too that actually ended up being my favorite. And this one, I wanted to try something a bit new. So these are called sprig molds, and they're really easy to make. All you do is take a little chunk of clay and press in whatever object you want to make a mold of. So I'm just using a seashell here, and the only thing is you want to make sure that you are not leaving an undercut in your mold that would prevent it from coming out of the mold easily. And then just smooth it out a little bit, and then this gets bisque fired and turned into a sprig mold. So to use a sprig mold, you take your mold and you put a small piece of clay into it, and feel free to get rid of any excess. And sometimes it comes out it pops out on your thumb, but sometimes you can use the little scoring tool to get in there and pull it out. So now I'm just slipping and scoring these onto my paint palette, which just means scratching the surface with that scoring tool, getting it a bit wet to create some slip on the surface, and that creates a good adhesion between both of the pieces of clay, so they will stick really well. And I just wanted to create kind of a little beach scene here. I just thought it would be really cute to add kind of a different element to this one. And yeah, just playing around with different shapes and sizes of palettes. I wanted to make one that had kind of a bigger paint well in the middle to have more space for mixing colors. So I'm just using the trimming tool to cut it out. Just make sure that you don't cut through the bottom of the palette. So really the possibilities are endless with these. I'm using my Amaco Velvet Underglaze to paint the seashells, and later I realized I should have used more, but you live and you learn, so it's fine. So once everything is completely dry, it's time to bisque fire them. So I'm using my little Paragon Caldera kiln. This kiln is great for small things and glaze tests and things like that. And it's really nice because it plugs into a regular outlet too. So I'm bisque firing to cone 04 using the slow bisque schedule. And once these are out of the bisque, they are ready to be glazed. So I usually mix my own glazes, and my go-to clear glaze is called Sue's Clear. I got the recipe on Glazing and you can find it in the description. But just in case you don't mix your own glazes, this is a really good glaze that I also like to buy. I also left that in the description. And I like to use these calligraphy brushes for glazing because they hold a lot of liquid. So now we can glaze our bisque, put an even coat of glaze over the top of each palette and just making sure to leave the bottom unglazed so it doesn't stick to the kiln shelf. I like to work with kind of a thin layer of glaze when I'm glazing something that has a lot of like small nooks and crannies, just because it helps the glaze get in there a little better. So now it's time to glaze fire to cone 6. And so I lit that fire for about 10 hours. And then the next day it's ready to unload, which is so exciting. I think they turned out so good. They're just super unique, and also just living at the beach, I love anything that's like beachy or seashell themed. So just being able to make your own art supplies I think is really cool and just makes the painting process even more special. I hope you try this project out. There's so many different ways to do it. It's fun, it's easy, and it's practical. Like I can see myself using this palette all the time with watercolor or gouache or even underglazes. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, if you have any questions about anything, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I love answering your questions and just chatting with you guys about ceramics. So that's all. Have fun and happy potting!